Let's get salty!
Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video. And this morning when I was reading through the comments on my latest video, I saw that Miles Bannister suggested we do a list of cards that were bad on release but got better in other expansions. And I thought this was a really interesting idea. And since Solomon has stolen so much of my ideas and it's worked out so well for him, I'm like, you know what? Why don't I steal ideas from somebody else? So let's do that today. And just a quick friendly thank you. We're like less than 200 subscribers away from 20,000. I know I've been harping on this a lot, but I'm really excited to get to that milestone and have something kind of planned for it. So if you feel like I've earned your subscription, I would really appreciate it. But anyways, let's go on to the topic of the video. So yeah, sometimes cards come out. They're not very good at all. They basically see no play. And then like a card in another expansion makes it really insane. So I went through my collection, came up with like 10 and a couple of honorable mentions of cards that fit this criteria. So let's take a look at 10 cards that really kind of sucked, but became really good later on. And like yesterday's video, this is in no particular order, but because I like going 1 through 10, for reasons, we're going to do that. So at number 10, I'm going to start off with Naga Sea Witch. This was a 5-mana 5/5 epic neutral minions, I think introduced in League of Explorers, and it set the cost of all your other cards to 5. And when it came out, I mean, it wasn't that great. All your other cards cost 5. It wasn't that good. And then all of a sudden the Frozen Throne came out, and the way they changed the rules and like mana discounts changed, and all of a sudden cards like Mountain Giant and Clockwork Giant and Molten Giant, they would cost 5 and then have their discounts applied, so you could play Naga on 5 and cheat out 0-mana giants, and it completely broke Wild. It was a Wild only card at the time. So this card never saw play in Standard, and then in Wild it became absolutely busted, and then eventually got nerfed after someone took an ad out to get it nerfed. It was pretty ridiculous, and definitely one of those cards that was like completely just whatever and became completely broken down the road. And I think it's now like 8 mana, just unplayable garbage. Number 9, we have Azalea Soul Thief. It's a 7-mana 3/3 neutral legendary minion, and you basically replace your hand and copy it with your opponent's hand. And when this came out, people thought it might be like an aggro card, like a divine favor type card where you like steal your opponent's hand, you just dump your hand and you steal their stuff. But turns out that that was an awful idea, and Azalea didn't really see any play. But then King Togwoggle came out, and all of a sudden you could do crazy stuff with King Togwoggle, Azalea. You could steal your opponent's hand and also steal their deck, and then if they try to flip it back, you could flip it right back. It also became like a tech option in Odd Warrior because they didn't have ways of like interacting with somebody's combo, so you would play Azalea to steal it, or like steal a Jade Idol in like a Wild Jade Druid matchup. And yeah, it became a lot better as time went on, but as it originally came out, didn't really see much play at all. Number 8, we have Grumble World Shaker. So this is 6-mana 7/7 legendary minion for Shaman, and it would bounce minions back to your hand that are on the board. They would cost 1, and people are like, oh, this card's pretty insane. You could like bounce with like fire elementals. Like there was a lot of elemental stuff going on in the expansion that came out. I think it was just like kobolds, and it didn't really pan out. Elemental Shaman was like okay, but not great. It didn't work out that well. But then the Witchwood came out, and all of a sudden Shutterwalk came out, and all of a sudden you could go infinite with Shutterwalk. You play like your Serenite Chain Gang, you grumble it, and then you could like, you know, Life Drink or whatever, and then play Shutterwalk and would bounce it infinitely. And all of a sudden Grumble became a huge part of that deck, and is still a huge part of that deck to this day. If you want to go infinite Shutterwalks, you absolutely need Grumble. And Grumble, for the most part, as like a value card, never really panned out. But in terms of working out in Shutterwalk Shaman, it became absolutely busted. And if you remember, day 1, Shutterwalk Shaman with Grumble Disguised Toast like literally broke the game. The animations were so ridiculous. Remember like Ben Brode's like, oh no, we can't have this, and it got pushed out anyways. Ridiculous card later on with Shutterwalk, but not so much on its own. At number 7, we have the Rogue spell Lichen Poison. This would give your weapon lifesteal, and originally it wasn't that great. You didn't have like that great of weapons, like where you could put Assassin's Blade, Poison's Blade with like Leeching Poison. No, but then a little card called Kingsbane came out, and all of a sudden your Kingsbane, which was an infinite weapon that would shuffle into your deck when it would break, had lifesteal, and you could put deadly poisons on it, you could put like oil onto it, and then you have this gigantic permanent lifesteal weapon, and became so problematic in both Standard and Wild that they ended up nerfing it down to 1 mana and to be a temporary effect. But originally Leeching Poison did nothing. People were like, what's the point of this card? And well, it became pretty clear what the point of it was later, and definitely one of the cards that turned the corner the most from being basically useless to completely broken. At number 6, we have a really interesting one here. This one I find fascinating. It could almost be its own video, and that's Luna's Pocket Galaxy. The mage legendary spell was 7 mana, and it would set all the minions in your deck to 1, and then it got buffed to 5. It broke the game, and then it got reverted back to 7, but became still remained a really strong card for its basically entire run. It still sees play in WoW today, but originally, at its very first incarnation at 7 mana, saw basically no play. So my thought is, was it really that bad out the gate? Was it the buff that made people realize how insane this card was? Because once it got reverted, it was still really good. There's the argument, there was like cards like Kalagos, the Reno, all that stuff, like the Reno the Relicologist, that made it better as, after it got nerfed again. But there was still Conjurer's Calling. There were still all these insane cards before when it was 7. So was it really that bad right away? Or was it just one of those undiscovered cards that buff made people realize how insane it was? And then when it became 7, it was still really good. It's just interesting, a little off topic, but yeah, Pocket Galaxy basically saw no play until the buff and became really good later. At number 5, we have the Hunter Death Knight, Deathstalker Rexar. Yes, when this card came out, it really wasn't that great. It was seen as like a kind of a bad value card in Hunter. It was like an AoE, but like Hunter just wants to go face, wasn't really value based. But as the cards kind of kept coming along, you had like Katrina, Carnivorous Cube, you had all these ways of like cheating out stuff. You had Dire Frenzy, Master's Call, all these cards, but also they updated Deathstalker Rexar to get beasts into the pool. When it came out, it originally only had the Frozen Throne like up to that point beast. It wasn't being updated every expansion. And then once that happened, they had cards like Vicious Scalehide, they had Lifesteal put in the pool, and all of a sudden you had like infinite Lifesteal value. Had all these crazy beasts that were added to the pool, and Deathstalker Rexar became one of the most like meta-defining cards in Standard for quite some time. But yeah, originally it was one of the worst Death Knights, saw almost no play, but with that coding change, with the beast support, with everything that went on in Hunter, it became an absolute powerhouse. At number 4, we have the Druid spell Poison Seeds, introduced all the way back in Naxxramas. It's 4 mana, and it would basically, destroys all minions and changes them to 2 treants. And this card basically never saw real competitive play in Standard at all. It wasn't until it went into Wild, and when cards like Spreading Plague came into existence, all of a sudden Seeds became a lot better because, you turn minions into treants and then you play Plague. It's very, very good defensively. And also decks like Naga Warlock became really popular, and Druid had no mass way of dealing. Still really has no way of mass dealing with a big board, but Seeds could kind of get you there. And funny story is, I don't really recall the seeing play in Druid until my Malagos Druid that I gave to Crypt to play on the stream. If you're not aware, I used to be a mod for him, and he played it, and he was dealing with Naga Warlock all the time. He's like, looking through the collection and saw Poison Seeds and threw it in there. And ever since then, Poison Seeds has basically been a meta card in Druid. So believe it or not, our vegan Salt Lord Crip actually has dictated a little bit of wild meta throughout time. And I honestly cannot think of it seeing play before that. So yeah, Poison Seeds is one of those cards that just became a lot better, especially introduction of Spreading Plague. At number 3, we have another Druid card, Aviana. It's 9 mana, 5/5 Druid legendary, and your minions cost 1 while this is on the board. And originally this just wasn't very good. It was 9 mana, and you could innovate out some stuff, but it wasn't game winning. It was very, fragile. Didn't really do a heck of a lot. But then all of a sudden, Kun the Forgotten One came out, and all of a sudden you could play Aviana, Kun, and then play everything, play whatever crazy combo. And I think the first big combo I remember was like a Cthulhu combo, where you would like play Aviana, Kun, and then play like Bran, a bunch of Cthulhu buffers, and then play Cthulhu and do an absurd amount of damage. And then in Wild, it became really popular. As I mentioned, with my Aviana, Kun, Malagos deck, I started this Ixlid build with Ixlid Faceless, and would just farm a Reno Priest over and over and over again. And then it eventually led to being completely broken with like a Liner Druid, Togwoggle Druid, to the point where Aviana got nerfed to 10 mana because, well, Psych Melon was introduced. And yeah, originally Aviana basically saw 0 play, but became insanely good as time went on. Number 2, we have the most recent addition to this list, and that's Whirlwick Master, the 2 mana rogue epic. 2 mana 1/2, and every time you play combo card, add a combo card to your hand. This card had not seen any play in Standard throughout its entire run until this expansion. There's just enough cheap combo cards like Prize Plunder especially has put this over the top, and people just start realizing, wait, infinite value for a 2-drop is really good, even if it's, you know, fragile 1/2, and it's become very popular in Combo Rogue, which is arguably the best deck in Standard right now. But pretty much its entire run, this card has seen absolutely no play, and it's kind of fascinating to see it being such a meta-defining card out of nowhere, it seems, just with a couple of like minor additions to the deck. Before we get to the last one, a couple of honorable mentions here. I'll go with Raza, the Chain, the Priest Legendary, 5-mana 5/5. You know, if you have no duplicates in your deck, your hero power costs 0. Before this came out, before Shadow Reaper Anduin came out, this card was just didn't do a heck of a lot. I think there was like this Chansey Priest crypt made for Wild. It was kind of funny. It was like kind of Anduin combo before it became a thing. But yeah, Raza was like a decent little value card. It was okay with like Inspire cards, but overall just wasn't good enough. But obviously became very broken when Shadow Reaper Anduin came out during the Frozen Throne. Next is Katharina, the Hunter Legendary. Would recruit a beast out of your deck. Death Rattle would recruit a beast as well. This became really good during the Witchwood, where you would cheat out like Witchwood Grizzlies with Cube, all the support that came along with it. This card originally, when it came out, wasn't the best, but I think one expansion later became really, really strong, but overall was never terrible, just wasn't good enough. And the last honorable mention is Thunder Bluff Valiant. This came out during the Grand Tournament. It was like an Inspire. You buff your totems, +2 attack, 5-mana 3/6. And again, Shaman was pretty bad at this point. This card wasn't that great, but with additions like Tunnel Trog, all of a sudden Thunder Bluff became really solid. You had Tuskar Totemic, Totem Golem. And yeah, Thunder Bluff Valiant came into like mid-range Shaman. That deck became like the meta juggernaut for like almost 2 years, and this card was definitely a staple in that. And our number one cards that sucked that became OP, and honestly this would be number one if I was ranking them, is Spawn of Shadows, the 4-mana 5/4 Inspire minion for Priest. You deal 4 damage to each hero every time you hero power. And this card was unplayable. It's just bad. Like, what are you doing with it? Like, you get a little bit of damage. But Raza came into the game. Shadow Reaper Anduin came into the game. Lore Keeper Polkelt's coming into the game. And all of a sudden, Spawn of Shadows is like the best OTK killer in the game in Wild right now. Card is ridiculous. People want this card nerfed over Shadow Reaper Anduin and Raza a lot of the time, thinking it's the problem. I don't think it's quite that, but it's a card that's absolutely insane in Raza Priest now. And before it was like just this unplayable garbage epic that you would really feel bad opening back in the day. So let me know in the comments below, do you agree or disagree with any of these? What are there any other cards you can think of that sucked but became really good as time went on? Or maybe there's cards that suck right now that you think will become really good later on. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day. Stay salty, my friends.